Oh, those quiet waters. I just love that song. I haven't heard it in such a long. What a perfect way to go into this time of quiet. And I invite you now to just get comfortable in your seat. And if you like, you may close your outer eyes or soften your gaze. Take a deep, slow, relaxing breath. And as you gently release this breath, let go of any tension or anxiety. Continue breathing in and breathing out ever so gently. With every breath you take, you are releasing any tension, any doubt or fear, and centering yourself in the divine awareness that is enfolding you right here, right now. Become still. Become aware of the one presence and your connection with it. Know, just know that you are in tune with this presence and the peace that passes all understanding. You are open and receptive in this moment. You are whole and holy. You perceive the one power and presence around and within you. I invite you now to take one more deep breath and think of this long inhalation as the inspiration of divine spirit filling you with understanding. And then let the breath and let the sigh indicate the completion of the creation, the Sabbath rest. Repeat this process one more time. And this time, put your awareness of your inner power. Take a deep breath and feel your lungs expand with this, and then let the breath out to complete the creation process and relax. As we prepare to enter the silence, I invite you to turn your attention to the beating of your heart and to remembering your oneness with the divine flow. Bring your mind and heart into alignment with this thought. God is all there is, all things. Do this now for a few moments in the silence. And now, as we prepare to return to our surroundings, to this now moment, take a gentle breath and come back into the awareness of your surroundings. Be at peace. And so this is Amen. When I was growing up, I can't really remember a Sunday where we didn't go to church unless someone was sick or maybe we were on vacation. My mother had company over almost every Sunday after church. And I remember sitting around the dining room table for quite a while listening to the conversation. And later, as I got older, it may have been only my grandmother or my parents' friends from church, but there was a consistency and a dedication to this practice. Do you have memories like this too? I don't know if my parents were intent to live by the formula or remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. These days, it may appear that a lot of people don't give much thought to how they spend their time on Sundays. For many, keeping holy the Sabbath is nothing more than religious legalism based in the fourth commandment. However, this commandment might be the least misunderstood. But one thing is for sure, it clearly establishes a special ten. In his book, The Ten Commandments, Emmett Fox gives us some food for thought about why Moses brought this commandment to the Hebrews. He explains, we read that Moses found these people, the Hebrews, living in Egypt, a highly civilized, sophisticated country, a very pagan and idolatrous country, and very corrupt morally. While many of them were simple laboring people, quite a number of them had done very well for themselves by going into the professions and occupying important positions. They had gotten very accustomed on the Egyptians to take care of them. So Moses had to take the Hebrews out into the wilderness and keep them there for more in Egypt would pass on, and the people who would start the new way of life would be the people born in the desert. Moses did that because it can be very hard for us to change our way of living and our way of thinking. We absorb prejudices in our younger days, and as a rule, we never get away from them without a spiritual experience or a contact with God. So Moses, who knew human nature very well from his time in Pharaoh's court, said, I will take them into the wilderness and train the new generation and take them into the promised land to start the new civilization. Consequently, he made a rule that they must stop working 1 day a week, get together, and be taught and generally instructed. He arranged that this should happen on the seventh day, which we call Saturday. The Old Testament calls it the Sabbath. As a side note, Sunday was probably redesignated as the Sabbath day by Christian theologians who thought it more fitting to honor the first day of the week when Jesus was raised from the dead. Actually, the Sunday Sabbath was not practiced widely until it was developed by the Scots Puritans very long after the Hebrews left Egypt. The key to the fourth commandment is in the Hebrew word shabbat, which means rest, intermission, desist from exertion. The emphasis is on the rhythmic flow of the universe, work and rest, outpouring and infilling. An example of this rhythmic flow is a piano teacher who may use a metronome to help a child develop a sense of rhythm. Likewise, the fourth commandment was intended to help the Hebrew people to put stress on resting for health and on times of prayer and meditation for refreshing their spirits. Through the millennia, the Jewish people have been very devout about observing the Sabbath. But to become attached to observing the Sabbath for its own sake is like being tied to that metronome. Soon it loses its significance and the student tunes it out. The Sabbath practice needs to be adapted to the natural facts of life to be and meaningful. Practice is an essential reset button that we must push many times before we can experience any genuine newness or change. Whether we're aware of it or not, we are practicing all the time. When we operate by our habituated patterns, we strengthen certain neural pathways, which makes us, as the saying goes, set in our ways. But when we stop using these old neural grooves, these pathways actually die off. Practice can literally create new responses and allow the old rigid ones to show themselves and be resolved. It's interesting that we've come to understand the importance of practice in sports, in most therapies, in any successful business, and in many creative endeavors. But for some reason, most of us don't see the need for it in the world of spirituality. Yet it's probably more important there than in any other area of life. New wine demands fresh wineskins, or otherwise we lose both the wine and the container, as Jesus said in Mark chapter 2, verse 22, or Luke chapter 5, verses 37 and 38. Practice, more than anything else, creates a new container for us, one that will protect the new wine we wish to take in. In Mark chapter 2, verses 23 to 27, Jesus is criticized for doing healing work on the Sabbath and for permitting his disciples to gather food. But with one short sentence, Jesus broke the fourth commandment down to its basic idea when he said, "The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath." He promoted the idea of the Sabbath as an opportunity for man to rest in spiritual consciousness, and not just as a set time or day of the week. Jesus addressed the greater need for teaching the Mosaic law to everyone, regardless of their religious beliefs, according to its underlying spiritual truth, which is intended to benefit the spiritual nature of humankind. In this light, the Sabbath is a gift intended to benefit our bodies, minds, and spirits, but it remains largely unopened because we have not grasped the spiritual nature of this gift. When you think about it, it's not uncommon to hear someone say, I would just love to have a day where I did nothing at all. I can remember that many, many times over the course of my life, wishing that. And then they go on to describe a day of tranquility, a day of doing nothing, a day of maybe making music, entertaining themselves with a hobby. But whenever anyone says, God has actually given us this idea, somebody else says, oh no, you're not going to get wrapped up in any legal observance of these kind of days. Some who have opened the gift and set it aside and forget about it. But if it's a gift to be enjoyed, what are its elements? Is it filled with tissue paper and you unwrap bits and pieces of other gifts inside of it? Well, yes, it is. And part of the gift has to do with remembering. The fourth commandment starts with the word remember. The Bible in general has a lot to say about remembering, about purposeful remembering. And regarding this fourth commandment, remembering has to do with recalling the purpose in which it was created. Remember it in its wonderful purpose for creating spiritual space to allow body, mind, and spirit to rest in relationship with all that is. To remember the Sabbath day is to periodically check up on yourself, to determine if you are moving, thinking, loving, working, and living in the flow of universal rhythm. You might choose to watch the rising or setting of the sun. Quietly tune in to that gentle beating of your heart. Did you know that the contraction and dilation of the heart happens 75 times a minute, week after week, month after month, and year after year, as long as you live? How can this organ work so hard and for so long? By frequent rest and renewal. The heart is not constantly at work. Following every contraction, there's a period of relaxation. Studies show us that out of every 24 hours, the heart is still for a total of 15 hours. Isn't this amazing? It is this rest schedule that allows the heart to go without stopping for decades. The heart, therefore, has its constant Sabbath. So we also see that rest is another essential part of the Sabbath gift. But this doesn't mean rest in the sense of idleness or self-indulgence in some outside pleasure. It's rest in the sense that you take time to relax and devote time to a sacred purpose. This time would clearly need to be worked out on an individual basis in balance with the other commitments you have in your life. Obviously, there are going to be days where this can be easier to do than others. Give yourself the gift of rest by remembering to devote time to a practice that refreshes your body, mind, and spirit. When Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man, he was emphasizing the importance of this practice of devoting time to a sacred purpose that sets it aside from any other day or time of the week. So what about this work that must occur during this time of rest? It's about expressing reverence for the oneness of spirit that we enjoy with God. The goal of keeping holy the Sabbath day is putting our attention on our relationship with the one power and presence that lives, moves, and expresses as us. Eric Butterworth, in his book, Breaking the Ten Commandments, tells the story of the native Hawaiians who have an unusual word for visitors to the islands. The word is haoles. It seems that when the Christian missionaries first arrived, they set about to convert the natives from their pagan ways. They set up little chapels around the islands in which people should worship God. And being a peace-loving people, the natives didn't have too much trouble adapting themselves. But they found one thing quite strange. Whereas in their kahuna practice, they always followed their times of worship of the gods with a period of silence to breathe life into their devotions. The Christians simply rattled off their prayers, got up, and walked out. So the natives called the Christians holies. And in this context, the word was popularized to mean without breath. Have you ever noticed that I'm finishing a hard job? There's a tendency and release from tension. This is a kind of Sabbath. And after the sigh comes another deep intake of breath that could symbolize the inflow of the Spirit. Go ahead and take a moment to experience this right now. Heave a sigh and then draw in a long, deep breath. Let the sigh indicate completion of the creation, the Sabbath rest, and then think of the long inhalation as the inspiration of divine spirit filling you with understanding. This is one example of many ways every day to keep the Sabbath. The Sabbath means to discipline yourself to regular periods of prayer or meditation. To keep the Sabbath holy means to do all that you do in the awareness of inner power and to have frequent silent parentheses to remember your oneness with the divine flow. If you're so led, keep the fourth commandment. Maybe go to church on Sunday when and if you can, but don't let your practice of the Sabbath begin and end there. Realize you are a spiritual being with the responsibility to unfold your imprisoned splendor all along life's way. I invite you to make the commitment to walk that way in holiness, in wholeness. Give yourself the gift of remembering to rest and express reverence for the allness of God within you and within the world around you. Take time to let Spirit breathe life into your whole being, to pause and become centered in the divine flow of life, love, and substance. This is what it means to keep holy the Sabbath. The word holy means whole. There is a wholeness within you. Always take time to be whole and to realize wherever spirit is, all the whole of spirit must be. And because spirit is this omnipresence, the whole of spirit must be present in its entirety at every point in space at the same time. Therefore, the Sabbath day is the time, any time, when you remember the allness of God that is present right where you are, as the fullness of all that you are and all that you need or desire. And so this is. Amen.